Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Gizmodo leak as well as everything we know now about the OGL and any changes to it. And I'm just going to give my thoughts on it. We're going to go through the actual Gizmodo article that they published 4 days ago, I think it was. But we're also going to, I get probably 5 days by the time this gets uploaded. Anyways, we're also going to be taking a look at this post here from Noah, my lawyer friend Downs. Notice he's not my lawyer friend, that is his name. I'm not claiming to be friends with him. I'm also not claiming to know he's a lawyer. But he claims that he is a licensed attorney with a focus on business and intellectual property issues in the tabletop and digital gaming industries. So that at least is promising. It feels like it's at least somebody who knows more than I would about this kind of stuff. But I just want to go through it and give my thoughts. I made a video not too long ago, probably a week or two ago. Excuse me while I grab an energy drink. Where I kind of took a more, let's wait and see approach, right? I was not too encouraged by a lot of Wizards of the Coast focus on monetization and how D&D was under-monetized or anything like that. But I also didn't want to overreact. I think, though, that this is a very bad sign for what we're seeing so far. Now, this is all just the leaks. I haven't seen any actual statements from Wizards of the Coast yet. I know that Clownfish TV did a video saying that they'd found like the full documents, but there was also a leak. It's not published by Wizards of the Coast, so who knows? This is all in the realm of speculation, and Wizards of the Coast could change things still. They could be like, sorry, that was just a joke. April Fools. And then try to pretend that, nothing happened and walk it all back. But I doubt it. So this article is by Linda Kudega. Let's talk about it a little bit. Like I said, this is from Gizmodo. I don't want to steal their stuff without giving them credit. Also, Gizmodo, excellent job selling your advertising space here. Though I must say, there's a spot here on the left you missed. This is just wasted space, Gizmodo. You could have been selling that. Anyways, so it goes through a little bit, talks about the open gaming license. I'll just sum this up really quickly because I'm sure most of us already know what the OGL is. A lot of stuff has been made on the OGL. So back in 2000, Wizards of the Coast basically made a document that was like less than 900 words. It was not too big. Basically saying that anybody who wants to base stuff on our things to make fan content or whatever can do so. And to be fair to Wizards of the Coast, because we're going to be pretty critical of them coming up here, but I do get that they seem to have thought that this was going to be, like you wanted to make your own adventure, maybe your own campaign setting or something like that, right? And that this would be, people just trying to expand and enrich D&D, make your own subclasses even, or whatever, right? I don't think they expected someone like Paizo to come along and make Pathfinder, which is the biggest competitor to D&D. Pathfinder is number 2 in the tabletop RPG market, only behind Dungeons and Dragons. And so I get that if you're Wizards of the Coast, you're probably not happy that your biggest competitor has made their game based on your OGL. While it is rather ironic and rather humorous to me, I get that if you're Wizards of the Coast, it sucks. And it's not just Paizo. Paizo is obviously their biggest concern, I think. But you've got things like Critical Role, where they've made their own campaign settings and stuff. Now, Wizards does seem to be pretty friendly with Critical Role. Like Matt Mercer was one of the writers on their Dragon Heist adventure. And a lot of their other stuff has been done, in conjunction with Wizards of the Coast. He's helped to, co-write some other stuff. But it also seems like Critical Role is trying to go to more and more of their own creation, and if you look at Tal'Dorei, their first one I think was published by Green Ronin, but the second one was, or their update one, whatever it was published by their own publishing company that's owned by them, right? And frankly, they're the ones who created that setting. They're the ones who created a bunch of their own subclasses and everything else, right? And all the different factions and everything else in their world. I can't really blame them for wanting to monetize their own product, right? Anyways, it's not just these though, because there's a lot of games that are all based on the OGL. Like I mentioned Green Ronin, right? But even Mutants and Masterminds, which is a superhero role-playing game, they still have the OGL agreement in their books, even though all they use is a D20, and then they have like stats and you add modifiers, right? I don't think that that's even really something they have to worry about, but they still included it because, at one point Mutants and Masterminds was much more closely related to D&D, and then over the years they've, kind of through updated editions, they've become more different. But you've got games like Dungeon Crawl Classics that I've talked about before. You've got things like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which I've never played, but I have used some of their adventures and stuff in campaigns that I've run, and I've just converted them to 5e, right? So, there's a lot of different people that are all using the OGL, and honestly, the OGL has helped to grow the community, grow the hobby. It's given us a lot of different things that I personally think are all to the good and have helped to just give us more variety. Let's face it, I love D&D. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love D&D. But I don't want the only game we have to be D&D. You know what I mean? I like that there's all these other games out there. I've played a bunch of them, So to me, having all these other games and letting people choose, like, maybe you don't want to play D&D, but you want to play Vampire, or you want to play Shadowrun, or you want to play Pathfinder, whatever, right? Players should be able to play the game they like, and I really dislike this idea of, these people are, just taking advantage of our game license, even though they've literally created all their own stuff. And once upon a time, it was kind of based on D&D, which, Wizards of the Coast didn't create D&D either. I was TSR. Sure, they bought them out, right? But, whatever. I'm getting super sidetracked. We haven't even gotten into this article yet. So, anyways, we used to have the OGL 1.0. They don't mention in this article. That was like 22 years ago, and then I think a year or maybe 2 years later, we got 1.0A, which has been the one that we've had most of this time, right? And technically, it's had a few minor tweaks and stuff, but it's basically remained just 1.0A ever since. So anyways, they say what's new in the OGL. They give their introduction here to talk about how it used to be under 900 words. The new one is over 9,000 words long. It addresses new technologies like blockchain and NFTs. And hey, fair enough, right? Those things didn't used to exist back in 2000, so it's obvious that you might want to address that. And it takes a strong stance against bigoted content, explicitly stating the company may terminate the agreement if third-party creators publish material that is blatantly racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, bigoted, or otherwise discriminatory. Now, on the surface, I don't have a problem with that, really. I think my issue, though, is that Wizards of the Coast gets to decide whether or not something that somebody else made falls into those categories. And especially if this other company is making money off this product and Wizards of the Coast decide that they don't like that, they have a financial incentive to just say, oh, well, your stuff is racist because we now use the term species and you are still using the term race, and that is blatantly racist in our opinion, or whatever, right? A good example would be back in the TSR days, they had a campaign setting called Oriental Adventures, and it was basically based off Japan. There was, like 95% Japan, and then like 5% like China, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, that kind of, type of idea, right? But most of it was Japan, and you had like samurais and ninjas and stuff like that. But a couple of years back, Wizards of the Coast decided that this campaign setting was sexist and used harmful stereotypes, and so it would no longer be available. And so it was taken from things like Drive-Thru RPG, etc. It was no longer published or printed anywhere. And, they just decided that this thing that people like me used to have back in the day and quite enjoyed was now racist based on their opinions of, whatever. And I really hate this idea that that one company just has the unilateral power to decide, oh no, we don't like something based on these type of grounds. It really just feels like it's a form of gatekeeping more than anything else. I've made different campaign settings of my own. If I put like people that are obviously inspired by, like, say, China and stuff, right? Which I had in my or have in my current campaign setting, right? If I tried to, say, publish that someday, then Wizards of the Coast could be like, oh well, we don't like that you depicted, Asian people, and we think that it's stereotypical, and therefore you're not allowed to do this. And nobody's gonna care that I'm like, oh, actually my wife's Vietnamese, and I consulted her on a bunch of stuff, and she's got a bunch of, well, her and I both have a lot of friends that are from China and Vietnam, and I talked to them about this stuff. They're not gonna care because they don't like that I'm making money off it, and that's an easy excuse. So I think that if this was going to be used to actually try to target racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, and bigoted material, I wouldn't care. But I have no faith in Wizards of the Coast to actually do this in good faith, especially when there's money on the line, if they can just say, no, we don't think that this meets our standards. And it's not like they're going to do a survey of the D&D community and they're going to poll everyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons to see whether or not that was acceptable in the community's eyes. They're going to be the ones that decide. Anyways, that's way too long on one small little thing, because that's like the least of my problems here. So one of the biggest changes to the document is that it updates the previously available OGL 1.0 to state that it is no longer an authorized license agreement. By ending the original OGL, many licensed publishers will have to completely overhaul their products and distribution in order to comply with the updated rules. So one thing I want to point out, I saw a couple lawyers talk about this because there was some confusion that the original OGL claimed to be a perpetual agreement, right? And I saw some people asking the lawyers, well, if it's perpetual, then how can they cancel it? But they said that perpetual in a legal sense just means that it goes and goes forever unless the party that issued it wants to change it or terminate it, right? So perpetual just means that there's no expiry date, but they can still cancel it at any point, which is what Wizards of the Coast is now deciding to do, right? Anyways, it says large publishers who focus almost exclusively on products based on the original OGL, including Paizo, Kobold Press, Green Ronin, etc., will be under pressure to update their business model incredibly fast. And, I'm a big fan of Kobold Press. I've mentioned them many times. I use a bunch of their third-party Monster Manual type products. I haven't used a lot of Green Ronin stuff, but I have used some, and I like it, I think that a lot of times these third-party materials can be really, really interesting because, it's a different world, it's their own setting. They can be a little more creative and not have to worry quite as much about, the bigger D&D picture. If you're just making your own world, it doesn't really matter as much if it doesn't, fit everything else that Wizards of the Coast wants to do. Anyways, it says, this is no mistake. According to the document procured by IO9, the new agreement states that the open gaming license was always intended to allow the community to help grow D&D and expand it creatively. It wasn't intended to subsidize major competitors, especially now that PDF is by far the most common form of distribution. So again, this is probably referring mostly to things like Paizo and maybe to a degree Critical Role as well, right? But, they're not happy that other competitors have arisen and, are making money using the OGL and making products. And like I said, I don't really blame them. I just think they're handling it in the worst possible way. Anyways, it says this sentiment is reiterated later in the document. The OGL wasn't intended to fund major competitors, and it wasn't intended to allow people to make D&D apps, videos, or anything else other than printed or printable materials for use while gaming. So even if you use like a phone app, let's say you have a character creator app, right? Well, they don't want you using that. They want you to use their character creator app. They don't want you using like instructional videos or anything unless it's theirs, right? So anything that could be marketable or created by somebody else, where money could be going to someone else, they want the money. that's what it comes down to. Anyways, I think we're going to skip some of this stuff because I really want to get to this other article where we can get some actual legal discussion. There's a bunch of stuff talking about the fan content policy, talking about, they mentioned the different tiers because there's going to be royalties that OGL publishers will have to pay. So I guess we'll talk about that. The revenue tiers are as follows. A, the initiate tier. If you have registered at least one licensed work but haven't generated $50,000 or more in total gross revenue from the OGL commercial products in a given year, you're at the initiate tier. B, the intermediate tier. If your licensed works have generated more than $50,000 in total revenue in a given year, but less than $750,000, you are at the intermediate tier. C, the expert tier. If your licensed works have generated at least $750,000 in total revenue in a given year, you are at the expert tier. Notice that this is all based on total revenue, though, not on profits. So if you did $1 million Kickstarter, you would qualify, even if you spent, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on creating it all, bringing it to market, giving Kickstarter their cut, paying artists, paying editors, everything else, right? You didn't make $1 million, but you generated $1 million in revenue. Now, it's important to note too, the revenue is for things in excess of the $750,000, right? So I've heard people say, well, if you made $1 million, then you're gonna have to give Wizard of the Coast $250,000. No, you'd have to pay the 20% for Kickstarter, 25% if you're not on Kickstarter, of the excess. So that last $250,000 is what you're paying the royalty on. But that is an extremely high royalty. A lot of places are like 5%. Like 25% is ridiculous. A lot of places don't even make 25% on their entire product, right? So if you're looking at a 15 or 20% profit after all your expenses, and then they're like, oh yeah, but if you make over $750,000, you're giving us 25% of all that excess, then that's just a huge detriment towards making any of their products, right? So they're saying that Wizards of the Coast expects that less than 20% of the companies are at the expert tier, but as I've seen multiple people point out, they also reserve the right to change that number, right? So they could drop it down to $500,000 instead. They could drop it down to the $50,000 total that they give here in B. They could decide that $50,001 is now your mark. Who knows? Maybe they won't do that. This is all just speculation, right? But it's not looking good. Anyways, who has to register work with Wizards of the Coast? The updated OGL says that no matter what tier you're in or how much money you believe your product will make, you must register with us any new licensed work you intend to offer for sale, including a description of the licensed work. We'll also ask for your contact information on where you intend to publish the licensed work, and its price, among other things. Creators will also be required to use a specific badge in order to publicly and obviously identify their work as covered by the updated OGL. They will have to give Wizards of the Coast a copy of the publication. The early draft suggests that many of these processes will be handled through the company's official digital toolset, D&D Beyond. None of this is good stuff. So let's say, I already mentioned my White Spire campaign, right? Let's say at some point I decided, hey, I'd kind of like to publish this, and I'm just going to do it fairly cheap. It's going to be like a PDF or whatever, right? Or maybe I do a Kickstarter for it, whatever, right? And I decide that I want to sell it through maybe my YouTube channel, or I start my own website, or through Kickstarter, or whatever, right? Even if I sell like 10 copies, I have to notify Wizards of the Coast, I have to give them a copy, and they reserve the right to take my work and make it their own and publish it themselves without giving me any royalties. All this stuff does is just have a chilling effect on anybody who wants to create things. And you might be thinking, well, I don't really care about this stuff. I just play D&D on the weekend with my buddies and it's fun. It's like, yeah, but the more that people are bitter against Wizards of the Coast. That means the less people want to create more stuff, and it just starts to like have this cancerous effect on the entire industry. Anyways, they talk about Kickstarter being the preferred platform. I don't care about that, and the power is back at Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. So let's go to the second article here by Noah, my lawyer friend Downs. So he starts out by giving his credentials. He's a licensed attorney with a focus on business and intellectual property issues in the tabletop and digital gaming industries. He also mentions at the bottom in the disclaimer that this is just all his opinion because, things get complicated, and even though he's a lawyer, he doesn't necessarily know what's necessarily going to happen, right? He mentions, definition of terms, right? Revocable license, third-party creators, blah, 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 right? And then he gives a quick summary of what's happening, but we've already covered that. The good stuff starts here, this paragraph here. OGL 1.1 is not an open license, although Wizards of the Coast tries to claim that it is. It's a severely restricted set of licenses, commercial and non-commercial, that grant Wizards of the Coast broad rights to the works of third-party creators and requires incredibly high royalty percentages in exchange for continuing to create. Third-party creators who agree to OGL 1.1 grant WotC, I hate that abbreviation, but whatever, the right to reprint, distribute, and otherwise exploit the third-party creator's works without any compensation, and also require the third-party creators to pay WotC a royalty if the third-party creator finds enough success with their work. What's followed is a huge industry discussion about what OGL 1.1 means for third-party creators, both established and fledgling, as well as the tabletop industry as a whole. And he then does a Q&A, which I like quite a bit. So we'll go through this. Question: who does this affect and why should I care? Answer: OGL 1.1 affects companies, creators, and fans alike. Virtual tabletops such as Alchemy RPG and Foundry VTT will be unable to host D&D content and modules at all, which will only be available on Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. Third-party creators such as the Griffin Saddlebag, DM Dave, Loot Tavern, and Mage Hand Press are also subject to those fees, but in addition, risk losing control of the work they make to WotC. D&D-based Kickstarters will be subject to a royalty that makes them all but infeasible. All of this only serves to chill and limit the growth of the tabletop economy and community, limiting the amount of D&D content made by third-party creators for fans, and serving as a gatekeeping measure for the industry and the hobby as a whole. Question: I'm a third-party creator. Should I sign OGL 1.1? Answer: I cannot tell you whether to accept OGL 1.1 or not, but I can supply you with information to help make your decision. Here's a breakdown of the important points. 1. Any third-party creator that signs OGL 1.1 will be bound by the terms of OGL 1.1 as currently written and subsequently updated. 2. Agreeing to OGL 1.1 means that you will have to 1. Report what works you or your company are making to Wizards of the Coast. 2. Report revenue from your works to Wizards of the Coast if above $50,000. And 3. Pay Wizards of the Coast a 25% royalty on revenue over a certain threshold, currently $750,000, from your works. 3. You will own your content and your works and can distribute them to certain places. However, Wizards of the Coast will receive a perpetual, irrevocable right to use your works and to allow others to use your works without additional payment to you. This would allow Wizards of the Coast to publish these works in places you would not be allowed to, and to allow others to do the same. Your works are the core of your business. It would be generally a bad idea to give someone else near unlimited access to your business. So if we take a look at something like Critical Role, it's a great example, right? Now, a lot of their stuff is Twitch, right? And because it's streaming, I don't think that Wizards of the Coast really has anything to do with that. But they also publish their own like books and other materials, right? Campaign settings, class guides, things like that, right? And there'd be nothing to stop Wizards of the Coast from just deciding that, hey, we want to publish this stuff too ourselves. And, they'd be able to do that under this agreement. Now, I should point out too that apparently anything like they can't just like retroactively take, say, Pathfinder away from Paizo, right? everything that was published under the original OGL 1.0 and 1.0A is still treated as being under that agreement. This would only affect new things going forward, but that also just really disincentivizes people from making new things under this OGL. Anyways, back to this article. Question: wait, $750,000 sounds like a lot. Doesn't this only affect a few huge companies? Answer: no, not necessarily, for several reasons. One, while $750,000 seems like a large number, that's based on gross revenue. We've already talked about that. Gross revenue is the total of all money generated from work without taking into account any part of that total that has or will be used for expenses. In many cases, a third-party creator's actual profit will be less than 25% because of expenses for artists, writers, marketing, etc. In addition, the third-party creators have to pay platform fees for distribution, approximately 7% for Kickstarter, 8% for Patreon, and 20% for Roll20. Therefore, a 25% royalty on gross revenue can actually cause a third-party creator to lose money, even if they try to make, or if they even try to make the works in the first place. Number two, the $750,000 amount is the current threshold for WotC to impose a royalty. This number can be freely changed by WotC at any time, simply with an email to you. It is likely that Wizards of the Coast will rely on the $50,000 revenue threshold to determine how much to reduce the $750,000 revenue threshold by, so that they can incrementally increase the number of third-party creators subject to the license. That's just his opinion, but it does seem likely. I mean, honestly, why include a clause saying that you can change it at any time if you don't ever intend to change it, right? Anyways, number three, Kickstarters have no cap on revenue you can raise for your product. So if you kickstart a successful campaign, then you may end up accidentally crossing the $750,000 threshold and suddenly having a new expense that you did not account for in the fulfillment of your project. Yeah, good point. Question: it's been over 20 years since the OGL was updated. Why is WotC just now doing this? Answer: Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast. I feel like that could have been his answer right there. He could have just ended that sentence. But anyways, and on December 8th, 2022, announced to investors that, although, quote, D&D has never been more popular, end quote, and has, quote, really great fans and engagement, end quote, the hobby is under-monetized, aka Hasbro is not making enough money from it, despite Wizards of the Coast nearly $1 billion in revenue last year. Now, let's point out that's $1 billion in revenue, right? Not $1 billion in profits. We've already discussed that. But still, $1 billion in revenue is a lot of money, and they want more money from that. In order to increase the monetization, Wizards of the Coast can do two things. It can either invest in a team of writers, creatives, and creators to increase the publications and offerings Wizards of the Coast publishes each year, or it can take money from third-party creators by subjecting them to a royalty. The OGL 1.1 takes a foundational document, OGL 1.0A, that creators have relied on for 2 decades and replaces it with something that Wizards of the Coast monetization of D&D at the third party's creators' expense. Question: why not just continue using the OGL 1.0A? Answer: unfortunately, the OGL 1.1 expressly revokes the OGL 1.0A despite this FAQ from Wizards of the Coast, which claimed, question, can't Wizards of the Coast change the license agreement in a way that I wouldn't like? Answer: yes, it could. However, the license already defines what will happen to content that has been previously distributed using an earlier version in Section 9. As a result, even if Wizards made a change that you disagreed with, you could continue to use an earlier acceptable version at your option. In other words, there's no reason for Wizards to ever make a change that the community of people using the Open Gaming license would object to, because the community would just ignore the change anyway. Wow, that didn't age well, did it? Because it appears that every single word of that is a lie. Anyways, back to this. It says, I do believe that there are potential legal challenges to the revocation of the OGL 1.0A, especially given the length of time third-party creators have relied upon OGL 1.0A and the speed with which WotC has taken action to revoke it. However, these challenges would have to take place in court. And that's a very important point, right? Hasbro is the biggest toy company in the world. If you and your buddy decide that you want to publish your own campaign setting, and you're both working full time, and on the weekends and in evenings you get together and you work on it, you know, do you have the money to fight them in court? Like, almost certainly not, you know, and they know that. So, you know, it would really take another big company like, you know, I don't even know if Green Ronin has the money to fight them in court, right? Like, Paizo probably does, but do they want to? That's a big risk, you know. I should also point out, this isn't entirely a Wizards of the Coast thing. TSR was pretty litigious back in the day too, right? They, you know, tried suing other people and suing themselves and suing half the people that helped fund the company, and you know, they had their share of these similar types of issues, right? So this is not unique to Wizards of the Coast. I don't want to sound like it is, but anyways, question. So if I'm a third-party creator and I have to agree to the OGL 1.1 if I wanted to continue to make licensed content using works what Wizards of the Coast is claiming to own? Answer: correct. That's what Wizards of the Coast is saying. Question: and if I don't, I'm at risk of getting sued? Answer: yep. Question: that sucks. I'll just point out that that's not actually a question, that's a statement. Answer: you're not wrong. Question: there's got to be something else we can do. That's also not a question. Come on, people. Let's step up our questioning game here. Answer: agreed. Several third-party creators are building out their own open licenses and system reference documents that will be system agnostic, aka you can use the works they publish there with any compatible system, whether it's D&D 5e to Monster of the Week to the Marvel Multiverse RPG. In addition, you can support third-party creators by telling your fans and fellow players that we need a hashtag OpenD&D to continue to grow this game that we love. Question: what if I have more questions that weren't answered here? Answer: there's likely an answer somewhere. Hit me up on Twitter at @mylawyerfriend or dive into any third-party creator Discord where they're chatting about this. Use these resources to answer any questions you have. In conclusion, so here he wraps things up. This is a complex issue that is still unfolding. However, the main things you need to know are, he used bullet points, but I will say 1. The OGL 1.1 is not an open license, and it imposes many restrictions on the use of works Wizards of the Coast claims to own under relevant copyright law. Oh, there's also a clause that you can't sue them either. That's never a good sign. 2. If you're a third-party creator, the OGL 1.1 gives Wizards of the Coast a perpetual and irrevocable license to your works, so that Wizards of the Coast can fully exploit and allow others to exploit without additional permission from or payment to you. 3. A $750,000 threshold affects more than just large third-party creators and can be lowered at any time, and you can expect it to lower incrementally as Wizards of the Coast seeks to profit off third-party creator works. Wizards of the Coast is a cool company that publishes one of our favorite pastimes. However, they are not your friends, and if we do not find a way to hashtag OpenD&D, then it will probably diminish this incredible game that we've all come to love. So, I want to give some credit to Noah here for taking the time to write this up and answer it all. Also to Gizmodo for being really the first ones to like leak all this information, and you know, we still haven't seen anything official, at least by the time I've recorded this, from Wizards of the Coast. Maybe there'll be enough pushback that they'll panic and change it, but you know, I'm not optimistic about that. In fact, there's even a thing here. Maybe it was something else I was reading. But anyways, basically where they acknowledge that they expect to see a lot of angry people and pushback, but they don't seem to care. So, you know, maybe it'll be worse than they expected, and maybe they will care. But I think we really have to realize that this is going to have a very chilling effect on Dungeons and Dragons, and probably on tabletop role-playing in general, honestly. And, you know, that's definitely not something to be happy about. Again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future. Maybe, you know, in 10 years we'll all be like, oh, remember when we were all worried about OGL 1.1? There was nothing. You know, that's possible, right? But as of now, I'm quite worried about it. And I know my last video was like, I'm a little concerned, but we should, you know, don't panic. Let's just hold off and see. I think that we've gone from like a 3 on the panic meter to like a 7. Anyways, those are my thoughts. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I know that this has been something that's been a pretty hot topic lately. Like I said, I am pretty late to the party, as per usual. I know. But, you know, it's still developing, and I don't really like talking a lot of the business side, right? I like making build videos and talking about campaign ideas and things like that, or talk about, you know, my favorite spells or whatever, right? But, you know, the sad reality is that this is, you know, a lot bigger than whether or not we get, you know, a new Warlock subclass or something like that. Anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.